Tēnā koutou katoa no mai haere mai. Welcome to this briefing on some of the amazing work that has been done and funded by Bloomberg. I suppose I might kick off first by just saying there have been a number of interactions that we've had with the Bloomberg and then Bloomberg Harvard sponsorship overall. They've been incredibly generous, and I'm excited that Barbara and her team and some of the collaboration that has happened can be talked about today. And then we'll take some questions, but I'll just hand over to you, Barbara.
Thank you, kia ora koutou. Thank you all for being here today. I've been looking forward to briefing you on the work we have been doing. I know you've all been invited to come here and hear us talk about the Wellington Underground Asset Map, but I want to kick off by talking first about the work we are doing with the generous support of the Bloomberg Foundation. And I'll ask my trusty team to move us to the next slide. I know there is a lot of information on this page, and we can distribute this presentation to you afterwards. But briefly, we are the first city in Oceania that has enjoyed the support, and in particular the very generous direct funding and indirect funding support of the Bloomberg Foundation. And if you're wondering why the Bloomberg Foundation is in this business, they are in many different businesses, but one of their very key areas of focus is an understanding that many of the big problems in the world are solved in a creative and collaborative way at a local level. And therefore, they support, through their Bloomberg Harvard City Leadership Initiative, the work of cities around the world. And their intention is actually not only to fund worthy projects, but to also help build capacity and capability in cities around the world in terms of leadership and management to address increasingly wicked problems that we share at a global level as well as at a local level. And you can see on this slide, just as a brief example, first of all, Bloomberg granted us $1 million to support work on developing our climate adaptation digital twin as an engagement and planning tool for the city. And this is extremely important work because it's a way in which we can engage with people to show them in real time and in a very visual way the impacts of, for example, flooding and coastal inundations on local communities as we grapple with climate change. Also, we've had generous support from Bloomberg in terms of our cycling work. So the Bloomberg International Cycling Initiative has granted funding. And again, this is funding not only to directly support projects, but also to help in the development capacity and capability of our staff and to expose our staff to creative ideas that are being developed around the world. And then our mayor last year successfully applied for, on top of this, and was accepted to be part of the program that is called the Bloomberg Harvard Mayor's City Leadership Initiative. And this is where every year they support 40 mayors from around the world with two of their key officials they see as important to driving change in their organisations, with leadership and management development and training, and also the opportunity to be part of what is called a collaboration track. And I'm going to move to the next slide here to talk a little bit more about the collaboration track. So Wellington City was accepted as one of the 40 cities from around the world invited to put an application forward to be part of this track with 9 other cities from around the world. And here you'll see a map of where these cities are located. So a number in the United States. Very, very interesting actually to look at the problems that people are grappling with around the world, and also a team from Saudi Arabia, team from South Africa, Amsterdam in the Netherlands, and then good old Wellington, New Zealand. And we are in fact the furthest city away they have ever worked with, and they had to think quite hard about how they would do this. But the wonders of technology, particularly post-COVID, have meant we have learned new ways of coming together across the world, and in this case, and I will introduce you to our team shortly, a team of 8 accepted into this program to work on what they've called mapping subterranean assets. Our team has been getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning every week since January all the way through to about a month ago to sit in a 4:30am to 7am class. We've undertaken assignments in our own time, and certainly the generosity and support of the external members of our team I will make a nod to, in order to better learn and position how we tackle a problem which we are going to talk about with you in more detail, so you understand why it is not only important to our city, but it is important at a national level and actually at an international level. The other thing I'll just pause and say is, if you look at the list of, I don't know if you can see them easily, but the kind of problems that cities are grappling with from around the world are actually problems you will recognise we also grapple with. And lastly, I would say that Wellington, through our exposure to this international program, is actually working in a globally significant way, and we should be very proud of the work we do here, because we are creatively steaming ahead on ways in which we activate our city, support our business community, drive infrastructure improvement in a way that is leading edge, because I have talked to cities from around the world now, and I know that a number of their ideas for how they address their problems, we're already doing these things. So be proud of our city and New Zealand. Next slide, please.
Oh, while you're waiting, I'll tell a little story.
Okay.
So while I was sitting in the meeting with 40 different mayors, we were all talking about media stories and the big issues that the cities had to face. One mayor had to deal with the fact that 10 people had died from gunshot violence the day before. The other mayor had to deal with their huge drug crisis, which is actually quite common across the US. Then they came to me and said, "What's the big issue for today, Tori?" Well, the front page was about my dog Teddy. And it became the kind of like the joke in the room, real lighthearted stuff. And they were just like, "If that's your biggest scandal today, you're doing all right." So it did kind of help. Well, yes, we're a small country, but it did put things into perspective a bit. There is a lot to be proud of here. And given the fact that we are a small country in a compact city, the way that we can address problems is a lot easier than, say, cities in the US can do. So we really ought to utilise that. And that's certainly that's why we're here now and talking about this collaboration track.
Yeah, so it is truly an honour to be supported, and might I just emphasise, at zero cost to our city, to be part of this international program. And we are doing it because we want to address a real problem that we are grappling with here in our own city. So I'll move to the next slide. Now, it's a pleasure to talk about who is involved in the team that participated in the Bloomberg-Harvard collaboration track. And you'll, of course, recognise me as your chief executive there. Because this presentation is being live streamed, I will take the trouble to introduce our team to you. But also, I'd like to particularly recognise the external members of our team, who are all sitting, bar one, who could not be here today, behind you. And in no particular order, I'll just ask you to put your hand up. The Chief Executive of Taranaki Whānui, Kara Pokitapu Dentists. We have Jonathan Manns, who is the Head of Strategic Advisory, Government and Public Sector, Head of the Wellington office for the firm known as JLL, which is actually, by the way, one of the largest real estate services and property investment and facilities management firm in the world. So Jonathan heads the New Zealand part of that global company. Moving to the right, we have Nick Miscali, and Nick is the Manager Stakeholder Consenting and Acquisition on the executive leadership team of Chorus New Zealand. So it's fantastic to have someone from a national company working with us. And the other external member of the team who isn't here today is Sean Wynn, who is the Deputy Chief Executive for Crown Infrastructure Partners. So a fantastic cross-section of key stakeholders and you'll learn a little bit more about why this is so important as we go into this presentation. Then sitting down at the end of the table, you'll all know Brad Singh, the Manager of Infrastructure and Transport for Wellington City, and we also have Denise Beasley, who is our Internal Program Director, and heading the wonderful team of people who are sitting down here at the back, who have been working on this problem for us quietly but very effectively for quite some time. So the team who are fortunate enough to be part of this collaboration track rely very heavily on the expertise, knowledge and hard work of the team, and I really want to thank you guys. We recognise that. And of course, without missing our Chief Infrastructure Officer, Siobhan Proctor, who you all know and see over there. So what I am going to do now is turn you over to Brad Singh, who is going to, I think, tell you a bit of a story.
Yeah.
Next slide, please.
Thank you, Barbara. Stories are important. I feel that stories are a great communication tool. It's one of the oldest communication tools that we as human beings have. And it's a fantastic way to pass on information and share information without it getting bogged down into detail. So I'm going to tell you a little bit of a story that would lead into why this, why now, what are we actually trying to do. In front of you, there's a bunch of pictures. The picture on the left is of a digger driver named Aaron. And Aaron works for us. He works for a contracting company, but on behalf of the council. And every morning, Aaron wakes up and he gets ready to go to work. And he leaves early because contractors start early. You need to be at the depot pretty early. You need to be on the road pretty early and get your stuff together. But every day, Aaron goes to work, and he knows that when he gets into his digger and he starts digging, that despite his best efforts, despite the best efforts of his organization, he's not actually sure what he's going to uncover. And that's because the plans that they have of what is under the ground aren't exactly reliable. There have been times where he might have struck a water pipe that wasn't in the right location according to the plans, and was in a place that he didn't expect it to be. There have been times where he's dug stuff up expecting to find something and it wasn't there. And the converse is, there's been times where he's dug stuff up and not expected to find anything and found something. Aaron worries because one day he might hit something that he didn't expect to be there that could significantly harm him and those around him. He might hit an electrical cable. He might hit energized gas cable. And at the same time, Aaron also worries about the fact that there are things under the ground that aren't recorded at all across the entire city. Taonga, he doesn't know where these things are. In his lifetime as a digger driver, he's not sure how much he's damaged, how much he's lost, how much he has inadvertently destroyed because he didn't know it was even in the ground. Aaron also worries about what would happen in Wellington if there was a major event, if there was a big earthquake. Would he be sent to dig up stuff only to find that the stuff that he's been sent to dig up isn't there? Would that delay time? Would that then cause an issue in terms of being able to restore key essential lifelines like electricity and gas and water? But every day Aaron gets up, he goes to work, because at the end of the day, the system is imperfect, but it's all we have. So what we're looking at doing, we're looking at dealing with this issue. At the moment, we have a system, but the system is static. The system is unable to be updated. When someone like Aaron finds something that's there that he didn't expect to be there, there's no real way for him to update the system to tell the appropriate people that, hey, there's something here that I never expected. And we need to deal with this. Why are we doing it? We're doing it because by doing that, what we can do is we can effectively improve the way we deliver infrastructure across the city. That doesn't just relate to our contractors and the people who are actually doing the work and making it safer for them. It also relates to the average Joe, the ratepayer. Later on, I think in 2 slides' time, or maybe even the next slide, I'll talk to you about a real-life example. But this sort of thing where we don't know what's under the ground, or we can't rely on the information of what's under the ground, actually results in an effect to ratepayers. It increases the amount of disruption that they face when we're doing construction work. It increases the cost of construction work. And it increases the time we take to do construction work. And in essence, the taonga under the ground, without us knowing where it is, we're consistently putting that at risk in terms of us not being able to respect it, not being able to protect it. And so we think that by addressing this issue, we could enhance both social well-being as well as economic growth in the city. So why the cross-boundary collaboration program? One of the things that was very evident from the beginning of this program was the fact that as a city, we don't have full control over all this stuff. The stuff that's under the ground doesn't necessarily belong to us. It belongs to other owners. There are a number of parties that either use this information, have access to these assets, or own these assets. And that could be sector bodies, contractors, utilities, designers, locators, road controlling authorities such as us and NZTA. In order to make effective change, we need to be able to collaborate with all these parties. We don't have the ability to make the change by ourselves, but we have to incorporate all of them. And so a cross-boundary program run by experts at Harvard who have done this across the world in numerous cities and worked with cities on how to collaborate with external parties was the perfect track for us to link into, for us to be able to join to learn the techniques and the skills that we need to be able to collaborate with these parties to be able to solve the problem that we're facing. Why are we doing this? The top left box is a pretty convincing statement, a rate of return of about 12 times as much. I've spoken about the safety factor. I've spoken about how it would help with planning and effective delivery of construction. But I think instead of talking around the details of it, I'll give you another story. And this is a story that some of you may know of, but it is the Onapu-Rongotai intersection, also known as KFC Corner. KFC Corner has been a project that has been on the council books for a number of years. I think, in all told, you might want to fact check this, but I think it's been about 7 or 8 years that we've been working on it. It's currently under construction at the moment, and we're busy finishing it up. Last year, Christmas, I shut the intersection down, and I told the team that I don't trust the plans of what is under the intersection. So what I want you to do is take the entire Christmas period, shut off the intersection, and pothole the entire intersection. And potholing, for those who don't know what that means, it means digging small sample holes to actually see what's under the ground and to verify that what the plans have said are actually true. And we got a lot of flack for that. We got a lot of flack for shutting the intersection down and doing that extensive potholing. A note, while we were doing the potholing, we hit a water pipe that we didn't expect to be there, and ended up pouring water into the intersection. It wasn't a main, but it was a pipe under the ground that was not on the plans, and we didn't expect it to be where it was. Despite the extensive potholing, when we got into construction on KFC Corner and we started doing full excavation, the potholing only left us with part of what we expected to be there. Whilst you could tell that there was a cable that was running along, What we couldn't tell, because you do sample potholing, was that cable went up, went across, went down, went underneath something else, went around something else, and across. And so effectively what's happened with that project is the disruption factor has been huge for the city. The fact that we've had to do the potholing and shut the intersection down and then had to go back into the intersection to actually do the work. The time extension when we opened up the ground and we said, this is not what we expected to see under the ground, has been huge for the city. The cost factor is now 1.5 times what we expected the project to cost, because we didn't plan to have to move these services. We didn't expect that these services, and we had done everything by the book. Everything that was expected, everything that we were told to do, and any company would follow the exact same procedures, and we did it by the book. Yet we've led to a construction cost that's 1.5 times what we expected it to be. And that is the big issue that we're trying to deal with here.
So what exactly are we doing? And why is Wellington doing this? And is this a problem unique to New Zealand? I want to first of all acknowledge the team sitting behind me, Lindsay, Angus, Viv, Martin and Anthony. A couple of the team are from Christchurch, so we're taking some of the learnings from what happened in Canterbury and how they rebuilt their city and what they learnt. And we brought on board the best of the best. I'm the only full-time member, but they're a great team, and I want to acknowledge their hard work and what a great team they are. We began this journey about September 2021. We had in room 1611, I think it is, a cross-section of people from across the sector. We had locators, design engineers, contractors, GIS people, and we said, why are we here today? And they said, because there's a problem. And they said, well, why have you come to us? And they said, because you are about place and space. You are what connects and enables the city to function. So they talked about the problem, the fact that they lack trust in what's under the ground and the impact of that lack of trust and the lack of information and what it means for making sure Aaron can go home at the end of the day, what it means for costing of projects, what it means for disruption to people and businesses and community. And they said, well, if you do something, if you lead, we'll follow. So since September 2021, we've been on a journey. And that may seem like quite a long time, but I want to put that in the context of lessons learned from the fact that Wellington's not alone on this journey. Many countries and localities and jurisdictions have been on this. We have worked very closely in particular with the NUA system, the National Underground Asset Register that's been established in England. Their journey began over 10 years ago. The Scotland system called VAULT. So as you can see, we've got to come up with a good acronym for our new platform and initiative. Milan was supported actually by Bloomberg about this. I asked Sean O'Dane, could I go on a field trip? And he said no. So what is the benefit of working with these other countries and other cities? They have shared their insights and their lessons learned and their processes with us, which has meant that we've been able to achieve in the space of just over 2 years what it took some of them over 10 plus years to do. So we've been really able to hit the ground running. And why Wellington? Well, Wellington, as a road controlling authority, has their legislative powers under the corridor management powers under what's called the National Code of Practice for Utility Operators Access to the Road Corridor, also known as the Code, to actually manage the space beneath our city. That's beneath our footpaths and beneath our road corridor. So we are effectively the referee for how that space is used. We have to give utilities and others access to that, but there is a real opportunity to actually start to develop a better system for recording and access to that information, and to be able to update that information in a way that actually gives people trust in it. I want to note that in the review of the National Code of Practice happens every 3 years. In the last code review, and I repeat verbatim from that code review, they said, poor data on location of utility structures in transport corridors is contributing to an unnecessary level of service strikes and third-party damage, additional costs and liabilities, delayed works and reduced performance of all utility structures. So that is from the sector itself. So we have the mandate and the authority to actually do something about it and to work with Brad's team to stand up and actually manage that access. There are benefits even from doing marginal change. So I want to talk to you now about the actual program and what's actually involved. This is not a technology project. There are, and it's called a program because there are in essence a series of work streams. These are policy and process. So imagine we're building an online map-based library. You need a filing system for finding stuff in the library. So that's our Dewey Decimal System for putting stuff in the library. So the policy and process side of it is about how we work with the sector to set standards and rules and requirements about how they capture information, the timeliness of updating that information, and making sure that information goes into the platform. So that sits in the corridor management space. The next work stream is about building a platform. So we are, in essence, working to the principles of the Gemini principles set out by Digital Build Britain, and we have adopted those in New Zealand. And they are about things like using open source software. So what that means is, as this gets rolled out, it keeps the cost low so that smaller councils can afford and other parties can afford to use it. So we're working with those principles about the system will be set up in perpetuity for public good. Next work stream is about internal change and alignment. So what changes are needed within council to make the system work effectively? Work stream 4 is about how do we engage with the wider sector to go on this journey with us, and we've talked about the collaboration side of that. And then 5 is, this is another platform, so we'll have an underground asset register, you've got RAM, you've got Submitica, you've got Forward Works Viewer. That's a lot of systems for the corridor management team to use. So work stream 5 is about integrating all of those platforms in a way that they can talk to each other. So that's a further piece of work we've got to do. And then finally, where is the value add? And I always use the example, if you're interested in a house and you go and Google it, and you can find some information that's free, and then you can click on some that you have to pay for. So what is the opportunity for private enterprise to add value for this system in the longer term? What is our program roadmap? Well, we have been engaging extensively across the sector, particularly in Wellington, but across New Zealand. We have a business case which has been approved, and we looked at what information do we actually need to go into this system. So if you went and talked to Chorus or another utility owner, they'd have maybe 200 fields of data. We don't need that. We need about 6. What is it? Where is it? Who do we need to contact about it? Is it a critical asset and so forth? We don't need all the commercial information about those assets. We have sorted out the funding for our initiative, and we have received funding from DIA, Three Waters, Tranche 1, and also obviously we're getting support from Bloomberg, Harvard in terms of taking the sector on that journey, because this is a sector transformation. This is about engaging the sector to do things differently and to demonstrate the benefit and value for everyone in that sector. We are working on actually building the platform. The aim is for a beta version of it to go live mid this year, everything crossed. And then we will, imagine we're building like an iPhone 5, and we're taking that approach because we're doing this in conjunction with the sector. So we have what's called a technical working group, and that's got GIS people, surveyors, locators, contractors, design engineers, and they come together regularly and we seek their input and advice. So this isn't about getting a bunch of expensive consultants or whatever to give us advice and work on something. This is real world people doing this every day, feeding into what would work and what do we need to be aware of. So this is a ground up, iterative approach that we're taking. So from mid-year, we will take a 1-year pilot version prototype, give it a good shake, see what works, get input from the sector, and then obviously operationalise that at a later point. So this is a transformation program. We are focusing on our city, but essentially we're designing it in such a way that it could be rolled up and scaled up across New Zealand. We don't intend to do that. We are looking at the opportunity to look at how could this work across New Zealand, and we've talked with RCAs across the country, and we've had really good response. Auckland, Christchurch, and other cities go, we can see real benefit. Had a piece of feedback from the resilience manager at Auckland City, and he said, man, if I could do a data extract from this, this would really help us prepare for our next Mather event. So we've had good engagement and positive feedback from across the sector. But that doesn't mean it's going to be easy. I want to give you a wee snapshot, and I'm hoping that the screen comes up. Right, give it a go. Cool. Press it again. Right, so this is a very early build. This is a what's called a wireframe from the design build team down with Catalyst and Open Plan. What I've highlighted in the bottom left-hand corner is, if I'm out in the field, I'm working on a job, and I go, well, that's not where it said it was on the plans, or what on earth's that, or goodness, there's a lot of water here, or contaminated land, I can in real time put upload information about what I find. I can also upload a photograph. So that is going, I can also confirm, one of the things utilities have said to us is, we don't just want to know where things are wrong, we want to know where they're right. Confirm our asset is actually there. So this is a living, breathing system. What are we going to have for mid this year? A great early system with questionable data in it. It is going to take 5, 10 plus years to really, as work happens across the city, for the quality and trustworthiness of the information to actually be there. But we have to start somewhere. And when we engage with the sector, they come up with 26 different concerns and questions and problems. And we go, so do you think we shouldn't do something? And they go, no, we should get started. So we're not going to have perfection from day one. It is a long-term plan. But I'm really proud of the fact that Wellington has stepped up and is going to lead this. A few weeks ago, I was out in a steel factory talking to a bunch of contractors about 6 o'clock at night that was run by Civil Contractors New Zealand. We were talking about this, and it was great. They said, so you mean, can I upload a photo? And I said, yeah. And they said, can we have a leaderboard? And I said, tell me about that. And they said, well, if we update more information, do we get a prize? And I said, what sort of prize? And they said, oh, what about buckets of KFC? So the utilities give us KFC. And I said, we won't be using Rateways money to provide you with KFC, I'm afraid. But if you can find another source, that's grand. So there are those who are like, not sure about this change. But it isn't easy. And for everything we solve, there's 26 other things that come out of the woodwork. But it is a transformation program, and it's worth going on.
Kia ora, thank you, Denise. And so to take you back to a bigger picture view, this is your city leading, but this is your city leading in collaboration with a major network of key stakeholders who with us own assets underground, who incur significant cost. This is all about enabling the efficient and safe delivery of infrastructure, and in a city that has a plan for major investment in infrastructure, it's incredibly important. And why? Because ultimately the loss and cost and disruption undermines our economic growth. Getting this right enhances social wellbeing. And the other thing that I want to particularly mention is, and we certainly talked about this a lot in New York, is that a unique factor in Aotearoa New Zealand is the protection of our taonga beneath the ground, taonga Māori, the layers of history beneath the ground, the artefacts, the stories, the underground waterways, and also recognising, valuing and protecting them. And ultimately also in a city that is so seismically vulnerable, getting this right is all about preparing for a safer and more resilient future. So we're very happy to answer your questions, and I'm also very happy to invite members of our team to participate in the answering of questions, and certainly I'd really encourage you to say hi to the team back here and our external stakeholder team as we finish this. Kia ora.
Councillor Randall.
So, thank you very much. With your indulgence, I'll tell us a short story. I used to work for Telecom in 1989, and when it first started, and they'd done an assessment. This was in Telecom Dunedin, Otago, and we had a big prime system that had all of the telecom cables in the ground and overhead. And they'd done a business assessment, and they'd worked out that it was actually cheaper just to rip up the cable and replace it than it was to keep track of it. And so they shut the system down, which is where we've got into this trouble. So thank you. I think what you're looking at is very interesting. I've got 2 or 3 questions. First question is the practicalities of all this, bringing all this data together from multiple utilities is simply enormous. So in terms of a general principle, are we essentially making a copy of each of their databases, or are they actually giving us the data and they're going to use our database?
So perhaps I can answer that one. We are working with each utility, and they will provide us with an API link so that we will effectively mirror their information in our platform. So they remain the stewards of their own data, and our system will be what's called a federated platform. So it will simply mirror. So as they update their own records, it will automatically update in our system.
Okay. I think just to dovetail off that, it kind of links back to why the collaboration track with Harvard Bloomberg is so important, is because the data of these assets actually belongs to third parties that we have no control over. And being able to collaborate effectively with them to help them understand the problem that we're trying to solve, and for them to buy into solving the problem with us, is essential in order for us to, essentially what Denise has said, be able to take that data and it still belongs to them, but we have copies of it, and over time we'd be able to help them improve their data.
And so on the basis that so that's the right approach. I think it's fantastic, but it's also extremely hard work. And I understand why there's so much emphasis on process and governance inside your framework. That's the hard work. In terms of the main utility players in Wellington, have they all signed up, or is are some really more enthusiastic than others? What's the sort of state? Are we getting close to getting it together?
So what I can say is our team, Denise and her team, have been engaging with staff in a number of the utility companies for some time. But in bringing this group of leaders together in the collaboration track has meant we're starting to engage much more at a very senior level. So I have been getting around and meeting with chief executives of key utilities, and essentially at the moment we're particularly focusing on electricity, gas, water, and telecommunications, and so it's taonga Māori, and so we're hence how fortunate we are to have these leaders here working actively with us and contributing to the way we're doing that. We want to head towards a memorandum of understanding, so it's clear that while Wellington City Council is playing a facilitating and leading role here, that there is a united coalition of the willing who are working on this collectively, because if we don't do that, it will be difficult for us to succeed in doing what we need to do. And it is not easy, is it, team? So it's a work in progress, and this is a great thing that we're learning from Harvard in particular, is based on their incredible and deep research and our look at case studies of how cities around the world have grappled with similar and other kinds of problems, the criticality of how we work with people, which we can apply to any kind of problem actually that the city is working on, and goodness knows we never run out of them.
Cool. Yes, Councillor Chung.
Question for you. So when you've been looking at mapping these underground assets, what sort of technology have you used to do this?
So we're not actually mapping their assets. Each utility is responsible for capturing the information of their own assets. We are using open source software to build a platform, a GIS platform for visualising those assets and key features about them on a map.
Maybe I'll come in there to give a little bit of context as well. So there's currently a system in place which is before you dig, and so when you approach before you dig to find out I'm digging the space up, what's in there. Essentially, the system that is currently in place goes out to the utility owners and says, "Can you give us the maps of what you have there?" Those maps then get provided to the person who wants to dig. That person then goes in, digs, and says, "That map was wrong. This thing was not in the right place." But the system is static, so there's no way for somebody who's identified that thing was not in that position to feed that back to the owner of that data. And so that's the area that we're playing in. We're not presuming to be the data owners. We're not presuming to take over from the utility providers and tell them, "We're now going to map your stuff for you." All we're trying to do is create a platform whereby they have a dynamic environment to get feedback of, "Your records are wrong. I've dug it up and your records are wrong. This is actually where it is."
Yeah.
And for them to be able to update their data based off that.
The other thing about the existing system is you get all of those as separate records, and some of them are literally a PDF. But in the new system, it will all be put on one map. So in the existing system, you have to go and give that to someone, a design engineer or whatever, and it takes a certain amount of time to bring all that information together. So by already having that done, not only does it save you time and money, but if something goes pop at 3 a.m. and I have to go out, I'm Sean DeRue from Wellington Water or whatever, I can be in the field, I can be on site and get access to that at 3 a.m. to at least know who I've got to contact and to some degree what I'm dealing with there. So it's more timely, it's an easier to use system, and it's updatable.
Great, thank you. And what sort of taonga have you actually found under the ground? Have you?
I think that that's a difficult question to answer, because one of the things that we don't have is we don't have a map. We don't know where these are. So there have been a number of construction activities that have happened in the city, and we don't know the implication of that. But I will ask Kara, who's probably better suited to answer that question, to stand in here.
Just recently, there was a dig out in Te Aro on Taranaki Street, just off Taranaki Street, where they found some fishing hooks and sinkers, and also some other artifacts in that space. And from that point, they made contact with us, and they had to stop the site, all that sort of stuff, and that would have actually cost quite a significant amount of money and delay and stop work. But there are a whole bunch of known sites, particularly around Te Aro, but there are also some other sites which are just dots. But that dot could probably demarcate or sort of identify a whole area where there could be artifacts or sites of significance for Māori. And also within that is not only Māori artifacts, is also European artifacts as well, from first settlement, Māori settlement and European settlement.
Great, thank you.
Councillor Rogers.
Kia ora. I thought it was fantastic to see, and it took me back to the days of participating in hackathons. I was just wondering, you mentioned sort of using open source software, and I think it's really cool to see more of larger players like us adopting open source software. But my question was sort of about how are we contributing back? Because it's, I guess, quite easy to see it as free, but it does sort of live on this foundation of reciprocity and that it's open contributing as well. So is some of our downstream stuff becoming open sourced? Are we giving back to that community or sponsoring in some way?
Absolutely. So the Gemini principles of digital built, we're now using digital built Aotearoa to give effect to the treaty. We are working with other parties to look for opportunity for startups and other parties around New Zealand to actually benefit and add value. So there's a real, and the company that we're actually working, the Digital Built Aotearoa Foundation, who is a charitable organisation who is working with us to build this new platform, is actually up for the High Tech Awards. They're a finalist in May. So we really are supporting New Zealand and supporting that open source and new enterprise.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you so much for this update. It clarifies a lot. I just wanted to get a rough idea of the ROI on this project. I don't know if we've had a chance to look at that, but I think particularly for ratepayers. Is there anything we've been able to do there?
The short answer is I'd have to go back to the business case. We have looked
Just roughly?
Well, we've looked at what other countries have done.
Yeah.
And I will hand over to Siobhan, who's going to add some
I think it was in the
context.
slides, but in terms of return on investment to ratepayers, this is costing ratepayers nothing. So this is being funded through the Better Off funding that came through with the Three Waters reform last year. So you made that decision in 2022, I think, to allow that. And the return on investment, I think, is about, the BCR is about 12 for Wellington and in excess of 30 for the country.
Great. I bet Wellingtonians, yep. Yeah, Wellingtonians will be happy about that. And just wanted a bit more understanding on how the Christchurch team or the scenario, how that is leading into this and what knowledge or wisdom's being brought forward to help progress this.
So certainly Angus and Martin and the team from Christchurch and Canterbury have been able to look at how did they, because they established Forward Works Viewer, and we obviously adopted that some years ago, and it's demonstrated the benefit. But the lessons learned from actually capturing information of what was underneath the ground. Unfortunately, some of the initiatives that were, when the Canterbury rebuild was happening, were closed off when that was closed off. And I think one of the lessons is looking for the opportunity to make sure that these can be leveraged in perpetuity, and that's why we're working with Digital Built Aotearoa Foundation, so that whether there's a major event, be there that storm or an earthquake or whatever, we don't lose the IP of what's been created from these opportunities, and the rest of the country can benefit.
I just want to thank our collaboration partners and the team and your teams for this amazing mahi. This is a really good news story. It's hugely positive. It'll have a massive impact on our city and, of course, other cities that could utilise this. So keep it up. This is awesome, and we're very, very stoked. That's us.